Okay, you know what Toy Story 2 is, and you can definitely figure out what these iceberg charts are by now. The only thing I need to clarify first is that 1, this is obviously a series, so the best way to watch it would just be on the playlist on autoplay. But secondly, for whatever reason, when I originally made the chart for this, I kind of left the second layer, egregiously empty looking. I just couldn't remember stuff to add, I guess. But people in the comment section of the Iceberg Chart subreddit left a couple of good entries that I think would fit well for the second layer, so I decided to include those, and so if you look at the original image, you won't be seeing those two entries on it, just to clear up any confusion. But anyway, before doing that, let's just quickly get out of the way with the tip. Jiri scene, hope I'm saying his name right. This is probably the most famous or well looked back at scene from the entire movie. People absolutely just love watching this, and it's really satisfying to just watch everything go with the way everything's directed and how everything moves. And this has something that people have called quote-unquote visual ASMR to describe the scene and why it's so pleasing to watch. I'm going to be talking more about that as literally the last thing for this Iceberg series. And yeah, this is the most intentional and well shared example of this. And just everybody has their own little thing, whether it's Woody being painted or whatever, even just Jiri's facial movements are nice during this. It's all so perfectly done with the music and all. But yeah, on a side note, we know that his name is that because he actually had his own Pixar short before starring in Toy Story 2. Star Wars references. For whatever reason, they really had this in mind while doing the script for this movie. Maybe it's because the prequels are coming out and the originals are becoming really nostalgic by this point. I don't know, but there's just a lot of them scared throughout the movie, and I mean, you could kind of just get a general vibe from the intro, and basically all of the stuff that has to do with Buzz Lightyear that's not our Buzz usually has some sort of Star Wars feel to it, and the most obvious example, of course, is Zurg just out of nowhere, aside from the sake of parodying it, is saying that he's Buzz's father. Game tie-in, specifically referring to the N64 and PS1 game. And yeah, the movie got a game tie-in as they did a lot back then, up until 2011 or 12. But unlike all of those, or most of those, this one is actually really fondly remembered and reviewed compared to, other licensed games, especially movie tie-ins. In fact, it's just generally conceived as, a perfectly fine, good game. It's a 3D platformer, as was all the rage at the time. And even if it isn't up to, Banjo-Kazooie or Mario 64 par, it's still pretty fondly looked at and well remembered as a really good licensed video game. And the commercial's pretty neat too. All the music you hear in the series comes from the game because, I mean, what else can I play from Toy Story that won't immediately get this video blown up? Toy Story 1 callbacks. So, this is exactly as it says on the tin. There's just a few times in the movie where they directly reference a scene that happened in the first film, even with Pixar sequels, this doesn't really, happen so much. Same with prequels, or that one time they did a prequel. But yeah, it's just, a nice bit of, continuity to directly hear. It nicely ties things together and makes the two films feel even more connected, and it usually refers to Buzz, reminding everybody how Woody wouldn't give up on things and how he saved his life before, and now Buzz is, trying to do the same. They mentioned being stuck in Sid's room and stuff, and Buzz also directly refers to the other toys when they threw him off the truck and they feel ashamed of it, which is pretty funny. Buzz's Stiffy. So yeah, this is the most big, quote-unquote adult joke or whatever you want to call it that went over everybody's head as a kid, but then over 10 years later and looked back at the film, they're oh yeah, now I see it. This is the most known and famous joke from this. But yeah, it's at the very end of the movie, and Jessie does a bunch of tricks to let the dog out to go pee, and Apparently Buzz has a thing for that because watching her go made his wings pop up, and yeah, it's supposed to insinuate that the plastic toy got a boner. He got a Woody. Super Nintendo. This is nothing super like deep or anything. It's just that in the beginning, when Rex is playing the Buzz Lightyear video game, you can clearly tell from the controller that it's supposed to be a Super Nintendo. Like, it just straight up is a Super Nintendo controller, and it's pretty cool that they would just like straight up model that. That's like not like a Hasbro toy or something, and instead is a Nintendo console. And this is a pretty advanced looking game too, to be on the Super Nintendo, if we're led to believe that it's not just like Rex's imagination of how he interprets the game. When Somebody Loved Me kicked off sad Pixar scenes. Yeah, that's exactly what it says, like, before, like, the beginning of Finding Nemo, before Alpha Up, and, basically now, as far as I know, it seems to be like a forced quota that they shove into like every more recent movie. This is where it all started now. Before this, we didn't really have one. There were only 2 full movies before this, but Toy Story 1, like, the closest scene was probably like when Buzz realized that he was a toy, but I mean, it's not too devastating. Like, the shot at the end of him lying on the ground with his arm off is pretty, like, hitting and sad and stuff, but like, it's nothing like super tear-jerking. Plus, it's like, we know this is like actually good for him, because it's like, oh dude, you had to like realize or admit it at some point. And like, it goes through like a mix of scenes too. Like, it's not just strictly sad. Like, I mean, at first it's like funny and awkward with the commercial, and then there's like a bit of hopefulness, and then it's sad. But then after that, it immediately goes into like the most like comical and like weird scene of the first movie. Bug's Life didn't necessarily have one. Like, the closest thing I can think of is like Flint getting beat up during the climax, but that's more for like dramatic purposes and doesn't really affect anything. But then yeah, there's this, and it's just purely fucking sad and tear-jerking. We all remember it. I don't have to describe it to you. Even just getting clips or screenshots for this was sad enough. And the idea of somebody you absolutely adore just leaving you is fucking horrifying and really fucking saddening also, and I'm sure everybody felt awful for Jessie at this, but I also wonder, just as like a side tangent, how exactly did she tell the story to Woody? Like, did she sing this song and he was like, I understand, or did he see what we saw in his head also? But I don't know, it's just a funny thing to think of. But anyway, that does it for the tip of the iceberg. Very basic stuff, as you can expect. Next up, we're doing Underwater with those 2 new entries, and it's just going to be some more, like, deeper facts that you have to, like, actually kind of be, like, a fan of the movie to look into. See you.